Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Matt Zakreski coming to you from Pennsylvania, and you'll be listening to my talk, Tabletop, how to do social and emotional skills games that your kids will actually like. I look forward to sharing this proposal with you. Obviously, if we were in person, it would be a lot more interactive. So what I'm going to try and do in this presentation is to model some of the things we're trying to do and show you what might happen and how to anticipate and work through some of those problems. Um, we will be sharing this PowerPoint with you, and I would encourage you to reach out to me either via my website or via my email. Both of them are at the end of this presentation. If you need any other guidance on how to do these things, um, but I look forward to adding some more skills to your repertoires as we work with this wonderful neurodiverse population of gifted and twice exceptional students. So let's get in. So time to share my screen. There we go, sharing. There we go, tabletop. Let's get to it. So throughout most of the history of gifted education, we have focused on academic acceleration and enrichment. And this is, of course, in many ways, the heart of gifted education because we want to give kids the academic and intellectual challenges that they need to not only succeed, but to grow. But research is constantly telling us that social emotional learning, or SEL, is increasingly important towards working with neurodiverse populations. So this presentation is going to focus on how to teach those skills in a practical way. SEL is the process through which people learn, understand, and apply the knowledge, skills, and perspectives necessary to act with others in a pro-social manner. Um, and this is an important distinction because it's not about interacting. We all interact with each other from the moment we wake up in the morning to when we go to sleep at night, whether it's via our phones or in our commutes or in a classroom. But a lot of our interactions are negative or harmful, or some of them are neutral. We want to be as pro-social as adding something positive to a social interaction as much as possible. And you may wonder, right, how much does social skills matter in the cyber world? And as this hilarious meme would show us, that etiquette and interaction skills and emotional regulation matter um, in the cyber world as we do distance learning, both in how we present ourselves, but also in how we communicate. This is about making sure we are understood, making sure that we understand others, and being able to connect and collaborate in a way where we can't necessarily lean on that we're in the same room so I can ask you for clarification or I can read your body language. So we're going to focus on how to apply these things in a different environment. So CASEL, CASEL, they are the gold standard bearers in the world of SEL, and this is their framework for systemic social and emotional learning. So this isn't just a 45 minutes once a week period of we're going to talk about feelings. This is a pervasive and multi-systemic shift in how we think about skill building. Now, we're going to focus on the 5 core skills here. So self-awareness, knowing the self, self-management, be able to regulate yourself, responsible decision-making, not becoming overwhelmed by our feelings and being able to anticipate problems that are coming up ahead, relationship skills, how to connect with others and navigate challenges, and social awareness, the needs and wants and opinions and challenges presented by the people around us. These skills should be set forth in classrooms by curriculum, schools by school-wide practices and policies, and at home where family and community partners, whether there's people like me as a psychologist or at home, we want to be using the same language. We want to be practicing those pro-social skills. A lot of times families will say to me, I want my kid to do better with making friends. I want my kid to do better asking for help and talking to members of authority because I struggle with that, because I have suffered with that. So I don't know how to teach my kid how to do that. Here are some ways that we can do that. It does start at home, and school shares some of that burden because It's easier to get along with people. It's easier to self-regulate when we're calm, when things are easy, when we're doing things we prefer. School or any demand situation is going to stress us out. It's going to tax us. It's going to make us question ourselves. And in those moments when we are struggling to self-regulate is when we're more likely to make mistakes. So let's talk about how to do these things when we're stressed. So what are we building here? I'm going to focus on some concrete skills because, this term of social skills is broad, sort of nebulous, and doesn't really help us. I want to focus on frustration tolerance. We know gifted kids can get easily frustrated, and when we get frustrated, we don't make good decisions. We want to focus on positive pro-social interactions. Now remember, pro-social doesn't mean I get along with everybody all the time. A pro-social interaction can be I'm walking away from the situation because I don't want to get into a fight or call names. So yeah, we're not teaching kids to be lapdogs here. We're teaching kids to stand up for themselves. Problem solving, both independently and working with teams. Emotional regulation, because the emotions are coming, the big feelings are coming. So we can pretend that they're not, so they sneak up on us and whack us upside the head, or we can say, I know that these are things that stress me out or make me sad or make me anxious. So when those big feelings come, here's what I do. And that's going to empower our kids. Then we have self-esteem, very important, self-confidence. Can I do this thing? Grit and the growth mindset. We want kids to be able to understand that failure is a part of learning socially, academically, intellectually, and how to, really set yourself up to keep going when things are hard. Upstanding students, kids who are going to stand up for themselves and others, and the ability to have perspective taking and empathy. And I, of course, as a psychologist, I think perspective taking and empathy is the most important thing that we can do. Because if you can understand where other people are coming from, you have taken a huge step towards breaking down ideas of prejudice, breaking down negative interactions, breaking down rumors and bullying and all these other things. But you need to be able to take that step. And we're going to give kids some concrete skills as to why. So as a developmental trajectory here, we know that the earlier we practice these skills, they generalize and evolve over time. We can't give kids a playbook for every situation, right? Okay, when this person wants to ask you out on a date and you don't want to go out on a date with them, here is what you say. Life doesn't work that way. Life is much more nuanced. The idea is we give kids the general skills, the core background information, so they can apply the things we've taught them to things that show up when they show up. So talking about motivation and how to build resilience, how to make decisions, how to resolve conflict, the importance of play, the importance of communication. All of these things are core skills that can upload into the different situations that we may find ourselves into. If somebody asks you out and you don't want to go out with them, there's a big difference between laughing at them and blasting them on social media and saying, I'm really flattered that you asked me out, but I'm not interested. We think about social interactions as rocks thrown into a pond. Every behavior we do has ripples. It has ripples socially, it has ripples emotionally, and it has ripples in our entire environment. So since those ripples are going to happen, how do we make that the smoothest surface we can? And, if you're my age or older, you may remember the old school after school specials. I was a big fan. But there's a major problem with them. And if you're not familiar, the idea is that these kids would be faced with a life challenge and, somebody at school has drugs, and it was always just drugs. And they would be challenged by it, and then they would come to a solution. And at the end of the half hour, they would all hug and there'd be a resolution. We'd all move on with our lives. And life is not that clean or easy or straightforward. Life is messy and nuanced and challenging. So some kids are going to get these skills. Some kids, their lives are going to feel like an after-school special. They can always rise to the social occasion. They always have the right thing to say. They have that sense of what people need when to move. And that's awesome. I would certainly say that's its own giftedness, though that's probably a separate talk. But just because a kid doesn't get it as well or get it as quickly doesn't mean these things can't be taught. We need to meet these kids where they are. For a long time, the model on social and emotional development in schools was, oh, these kids have it, these kids are okay with it, and these kids don't have it. So, we're going to just abandon them. We're going to try and teach them how to have a handshake. But that's not really what these kids need. We need to meet them where they are and build skills from there. And to do so, we need to make the skills intentional, overt, and accessible, right? Telling kids to do better without giving them instruction doesn't help them. Telling kids, stop doing that, solves the immediate problem, but doesn't tell them what to do instead. If Johnny has a meltdown every time he gets picked last for kickball, telling Johnny not to have a meltdown makes sense, but it doesn't give him something else to do. How do we tell Johnny what he needs to do instead? And here's the important thing. We need to practice these things. Life will give us lots of opportunities to practice. Life is a series of social interactions and opportunities to practice emotional regulation. But for our kids who this is lagging or more difficult, the skills they bring to the table may cause them to fail more often. And think about something in your life that you've tried and failed at. Do you want to keep doing it? Is that an intrinsic motivation for you? No, I am not a math person. So if you asked me to sit down and do a whole bunch of math, I would get frustrated pretty quickly and not want to do it. And as I make more mistakes, I'm not going to want to do more math. So I'm going to tap out of doing that thing and then fail my math class. It's the same thing socially. If you ask Sally to join an after-school club, but Sally doesn't know how to make friends, Sally's going to fail her after-school club, get kicked out of her after-school club, and then we'll all be sitting there saying, well, why can't Sally make friends? Well, if we didn't give Sally the skills to make the friends in the first place, of course she failed. So let's maybe start with where our kids are and build from there. The nice thing about this, and this is one of my therapy nuggets that you'll hear 1,000 times, is that not everything is therapy, but everything can be therapeutic. So anything can be a social and emotional activity if we approach it with intention. And that's a beautiful thing because as parents and caregivers and mental health professionals, we have all these things in our arsenal already that with a few language tweaks, we can make them social and emotional activities. We don't need to go buy a kit or send them to a class necessarily. If you have a checkerboard at home, we can practice social and emotional skills with checkers. You just need to know how to do so. So we're going to talk about games and volunteering, school activities like making murals, how to use nature and environmental science to build social and emotional skills, working in teams, joining clubs. And it always comes back to these final two questions. What matters to your kids? If you have a very politically active group of kids, then they're going to build skills most readily in a situation where they're doing something they care about. So let's get a petition together. Let's do a letter writing campaign, right? If the community needs a park cleaned up, let's clean up that park. Our kids are going to build more skills and do better in something they care about. If your kids are telling you, we need better food in the cafeteria, and that's something that we want to politically organize around, and you say, well, that's not the right idea. I think you guys should work on increasing the butterfly population on the school grounds. The kids will probably still engage with it, but there's less authentic and intrinsic motivation there. So start with what your kids want to do and go from there. And then I always suggest, as we put in these kind of interventions, is to think broadly, think creatively. You don't need to know everything. One of the kids I work with as a consultant, she's really into marine biology. I'm not a marine biologist. And so we did some Googling and we found some people who study marine biology in the area she's interested in. We sent a bunch of emails, and of the 5 emails we sent, 4 of them got back to us. And of those 4, they were all willing to work with her in different capacities, right? And I'm not saying you're going to get an 80% hit rate every time you reach out to people, but think about professionals, especially in idiosyncratic areas of expertise, as grown-up gifted kids. What's more fun than talking about something you love with somebody who gets it? So if you have a kid who wants to make movies, let's talk to some people who make movies. If you have a kid who wants to be a professional ultimate frisbee player, let's talk to a professional ultimate frisbee player. Connecting with your community resources is probably the single best thing you can do in creating excitement, creating engagement, and it's so much easier than we think it is. All we need to do is reach out. You already don't have the thing, right? You already don't have that filmmaking consultant. So the worst thing that happens if you reach out is that nothing changes. The best thing that happens is you open a door to all these kids who need that resource. So we're going to focus on a couple of concrete activities. These are some of my favorites. And we'll sort of walk through what they look like and how to implement them. So before we get into that though, here is the number one, if you take nothing else away from this talk, I hope you take away this idea that the thing that makes social and emotional activities powerful is 5 minutes of processing time. So when we do an SEL task, process with your kids, carve out 5 minutes. What did you think about this activity? Why did we do it? How did you use this and how could you use this in your own life? What worked? What didn't work? Process, talk about it, see what they thought, see what feelings and emotions and thoughts came up, because all that stuff is really important for concretizing our skills. Have in your mind the thing you wanted them to get out from it. We painted a mural on the cafeteria wall, which taught us about our school's history and teamwork and grit and getting supplies and figuring out how to work as a team and be planful. When you tell kids that overtly, the lessons that they already experiences become concrete. Because the cool thing about this is that we benefit from the exposure either way, right? We benefit from working together and painting a mural. But when you tell people why we benefited, what the point was, what the intention was, that experience gets a label and it gets a concrete box put around it. So our brains are more able to access it and understand it, not just as a positive experience, but as a positive experience that was built towards developing X. And there's the power. That's the magic of this. So take 5 minutes and talk to your kids. If you take your kids in your own house, right? Let's go volunteer at a soup kitchen this weekend. You go, you serve sandwiches for a couple hours, and you're driving home. Why did we do that? Oh, because people need our help. Yeah, they did. How did it feel to help people who need our help? It felt pretty good. That's awesome. What felt good about it? I liked that they didn't have something and we were able to do something about that. I guess that we all have a lot more to give than we thought. So we're taking the glow and the shine of the good event and we're basically turning up the volume on it by making it more concrete. So you're going to win twice. All right. One of my favorite things to do for social and emotional skills, and if you've seen me speak at another conference back when we got to meet in person, you've probably seen me do this, since this is using improv games, improvisational acting, to build social skills. So one game that I like, and this is good if you have more of an introverted group, the but then storytelling game. So you start with somebody starts with a sentence. Once upon a time, there was a school in Kentucky, and then we point at somebody else to say, but X, something happened. Then we add a different sentence. Then this other thing happened, and we keep going until the story stops making sense or it gets stale. And as the group facilitator, you get to decide that, right? Sometimes we'll make it once around. Sometimes you'll go for 45 minutes. Inevitably, the stories become very much like the movie Inception, and we have dreams within dreams within dreams within nightmares within simulations within another dream. And that's hilarious because it forces our kids to connect and interact with each other and respond to something in real time without planning ahead and having this very concrete, solid world of this is what I want to do. Life doesn't work that way. So this is a safe way to practice that. Another way is this is about practicing the social skill of prosody. So the stress and intonation of language, because there's a big difference between how we say things that communicates a lot of meaning. And traditionally gifted kids don't always pick up on this, right? The difference between hi and hi seems obvious and overt, But remember, if your brain's going a million miles an hour and you're thinking about how awesome your chemistry lab was, you may not pick up on that difference. This is a way to make that intentional and overt again. So different words have different meanings in different situations. If I point over there and say, oh, look, there's a fire, versus, oh God, there's a fire, same words, but how I'm saying things communicates different tones. So we pick any word we want, right? Hello is usually the one we start with, and we say the word in as many different ways as possible. So you can start by giving somebody an option. So it's like, okay, Sam, you say hello like you're angry, and Sally, you say hello like you're sad, and Pedro, you say hello like you're sleepy, and um, Jill, you say hello like you had 8 cups of coffee, right? Um, you can also back chain it where the kid makes up their own and the rest of the group tries to guess. So if I say hello like, hello, right? And everybody guesses, well, you're saying hello because you're sick, right? But you're using that brain, that wonderful gifted brain that likes to problem solve and likes to find information, and making it work for us. So we're saying, oh, check this out. All it took was for us to use a little bit of problem solving, being a social detective, if you like the words of Michelle Garcia Winner, to figure out how people feel. And when we practice this enough, it generalizes to our regular conversations. World's worst is taking it up a step. This is if you have a list of topics that you can create as the facilitator, everybody gets to play this game. You're going to give them a topic sentence. So give us examples of the world's worst, and that's up to you, right? Restaurant, promposal, movie trailer, substitute teacher, the possibilities are endless. And the kids have to come up with sentences or actions that demonstrate that. So, world's worst theme restaurant, and one of your kids raises their hand and said, I wouldn't want to eat at a garbage themed restaurant. And we all chuckle because that would be gross. And then the next kid gets up and says, I hate pickles. So if I had a pickles themed restaurant, that would be gross. Um, and what we do is we get to know each other. We get to practice our creativity, and taking that creative thought and making it something that you can deliver. That's a skill. Oftentimes gifted kids struggle with that because the ideas are so clear in our brains, but it's very difficult to get them from here to here. So if you have a kid who struggles with the verbalization, can they act something out, right? Can you do a little tap dance? Can you mime? Can you scream or use funny voices? I mean, the possibilities are endless. You can talk about, as we process, what makes things funny. Talk about differences of opinion. I always bring up the pickles thing because I hate pickles. I think pickles are gross. A lot of people really like pickles, and I don't know why, but that's y'all's decision. And so you might get, because we know gifted kids are very opinionated. Well, I think a pickles restaurant would be great. That's cool that you feel that way, Derek. Why does Courtney think that a pickle restaurant would be gross, right? And then it's this idea, it's not Courtney's right and Derek's wrong. It's they have a different opinion. Let's have them meet in the middle through communication to figure out why they feel that way. Another style of game is something called a lateral thinking activity. Now, I'm a big fan of lateral thinking activities for the neurodiverse population because we know our kids are very good at what we call vertical thinking. Vertical thinking is, if you picture everything you've ever learned like a giant silo of information, you reach down into the silo, you pick up a piece of information, right? What is the name of the professional football team in Arizona? The Cardinals. What is the state capital of Arizona? Phoenix, right? That sort of thing. What lateral thinking is, it changes that process. It takes a piece of information and forces you to stretch it. And as you get more information, you stretch a bunch of pieces of information so a pattern or a picture emerges. So to play one of my favorite lateral thinking games called Bobby Collins, you say, I have a friend named Bobby Collins who lives his whole life by one rule. You have to determine the rule by asking questions about what he likes or doesn't like with yes or no questions. and your kids will almost certainly struggle with this. So, would he want to play baseball? And we gently remind them, does he like baseball? Bobby Collins would like baseball. Um, and you can play with one person. I find that these things work really well as groups because it forces them to listen to each other and take everybody's pieces of information until we reach this sort of critical mass of there's the pattern, there's the algorithm that we figured out. This is a great opportunity to have somebody be a scribe and write down all the guesses and what the answers are. Um, so we ask all these different questions about Bobby Collins. Does he like puppies? Bobby likes puppies. Does he like going outside? He does not like going outside. Does he like barbecue? Yes. Does he like chocolate? No. So asking enough questions ultimately gives us the answer. Bobby Collins likes anything with double letters in the topic word. Puppies, kittens, baseball, soccer, tortillas, whatever might come your way. And it's the sort of thing. If they run out of time and they don't get it, it's easily picked up the next day. But the whole point of this is that they have to take pieces of information and stretch them. Bobby liking puppies in and of itself doesn't give me a lot of information, but knowing that Bobby likes puppies, kitties, baseball, tortillas, soccer, and all these other things, now a pattern starts to emerge. And can you train your brain to think laterally and put pieces of information together that way? That's a life skill. Another lateral thinking activity is Molly and Ned. Same sort of idea, right? Molly and Ned live their whole lives by one rule. You have to determine their rule by asking yes or no questions about what they like and don't like. So Molly and Ned, do they like puppies? Do they like going outside? Do they like barbecue? Do they like chocolate? For Molly and Ned, the rule is Molly and Ned like all things where the first letter of the last word is A through M. So they don't like puppies. They do like going outside. They do like barbecue. They do like chocolate. Molly and Ned don't like all the things where the first letter of the last word is N through Z. So, this is the sort of thing. Figure out what pieces of information we get from every yes or no answer, and ultimately a pattern emerges. And if your kids are struggling with this, maybe tee something up for them. Say, they like baseball, they don't like t-ball. They like Mexican food, they don't like Tex-Mex, right? Those pieces of information become a little bit more important if you're thinking about these things the right way. Finally, we have, actually, I guess we have two more. We have the Strange Wizard. This one I like to tee it up and picking a kid, right? So in the kingdom of Kidsnamia, so say we have Kyle, so Kylea, the strange wizard, which can be your name or teacher's name or the principal's name, cast a spell over the entire kingdom. The spell is incomplete. It only affected some parts of the kingdom by a certain rule. By asking yes or no questions, determine the rule to break the spell. So does the spell affect puppies, dogs, barbecue? Does the spell affect chocolate? And the same thing, we ask a bunch of yes or no questions. And for this one, I'll give them the hint that strange is a synonym for odd, because the answer to this one is the spell affects anything with an odd number of letters. So puppies, yes. Dogs, no. There's another one of those hints, right? Odd letters, even letters. Barbecue, yes. Chocolate, yes. So strange wizard is another one. This is another one. This is, I think, particularly good for our STEM kids. And if you follow that link there to the spreadsheet, I've made that spreadsheet public and shareable. And this is an idea because math is something that seems very concrete, very straightforward. And because oftentimes it is. But this is one of those things where the document is filled with red herrings. It's filled with distracting information. Can you parse out the noise? Can you figure out what's going on? So Bill is the most famous and in-demand butcher shop in Buffalo, New York. Bill is famously ill-tempered. Everyone orders by number in the order that they arrive, but he only helps certain people. Can you figure out the rule that Bill uses to determine who he will help? Ask yes or no questions based on the data. And the hint here is best is a synonym for prime, and prime is also a cut of beef. So the answer is Bill only helps people who order in prime number places in the order list. And so if you pull up the list, which I hope you do, you'll find that the numbers, as they follow prime numbers, that's the thing. So this isn't about multiplication and, exponential growth. This is just about having that mathematical fact of prime numbers, but it's an algorithm rather than a mathematical process. So this is another one. It's a great use of teamwork and pulling out the noise. So then we shift a little bit into perspective taking activities. One of the things that gifted kids tend to really struggle with is what we call theory of mind. The idea that other people's minds work differently than theirs. I often joke around that when we practice social skills with gifted kids, it's like you're trying to run a race against the Flash. Only the Flash can keep up with the Flash. We need another speedster. Batman has all his own unique powers and abilities, but when we're doing a foot race, the Flash is going to win every time. So helping kids to understand that and helping kids to use that information to make connections is helpful. Perspective taking is a way to do this. So would I rather it's perspective taking activity? You need at least 2 people. You start by giving the group a question about yourself. So would I rather eat Wendy's forever or Taco Bell forever? Everybody guesses A or B. And here's the thing. This is the most important part. It's not what you would choose, right? You might have Xavier sitting in the audience being like, well, Wendy's is much better than Taco Bell, so I'm going to pick Wendy's. And you may need to gently remind Xavier, it's not what you would pick, it's what you think this person would pick. You are trying to guess what they're thinking. And make that intentional, especially at the beginning, because our kids are very well in touch with their own thoughts and opinions because they spend a lot of time in their brains. They know which is the best Pokemon. They know what is their favorite fast food restaurant. They know what order they should watch the Star Wars movies in. The idea is just because somebody has a different thought process from you, and they likely do have a different thought process from you, that doesn't make it wrong, and we need to understand it so we can better connect with that person. So we repeat this process as necessary. You can have the kids come up with their own questions. You can have the kids come up with questions for other people. So, this is a great opportunity to, if you have 2 kids who don't get along, or you have 2 kids who you think might make good friends, say, okay, hey, Bobby, say for, Julian over there. Bobby, do a question for Julian. So Bobby goes, would Julian rather go for Halloween as Baby Yoda or as Pikachu, right? And so Julian thinks, okay, and everybody guesses, and turns out that he'd pick Baby Yoda, because who wouldn't? And it's the sort of thing, now everybody knows that about Julian, and Bobby knows that about Julian. So you can see which kids have things in common and how they're able to process that information. What is it like to find out that you have stuff in common with people? What is it like to have things different with people? Your brain might tell you that's the end of the world, that, oh, to be my best friend, you have to have everything in common with me. But that's not possible. It's not sustainable. So let's not worry about it. Teamwork activity. This is another one that I really love. Hooray for us. I've done this with as many as 12 kids. After 12 kids, it starts to bog down a little bit. If you have more than that in your class, I would say bump the number up, or break it into 2 groups and have 2 simultaneous games going. So like if you have a room of 20 kids, 10 and 10. So the kids count in order, 1 at a time, ending up at 21. If you have a smaller group, do a smaller number, especially if you have like littler kids. When you reach 21, you all shout, hooray for us. The person who said 21 then makes a rule based on a number, and those rules can't be changed or replaced. So some examples here, instead of 4, you say chicken. Or when we get to number 6, you jump 6 times, you sing your number, etc. You can totally use your imagination. And then we go back and we count again. So if we're using sing your number, and the number is 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 20, right? Now, if I forget to sing 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we made a mistake, and the whole group's got to start over. Now, if you do this, I guarantee you that one of your kids is going to melt down, because gifted kids don't like making mistakes. Who does? I mean, honestly, I don't like making mistakes either. But then we normalize it because everybody's going to make mistakes. And it's a great opportunity to meet somebody's mistake with compassion and understand that it wasn't intentional, and make sure their kids experience that grace and experience that empathy, because that's important. When you receive it from others, it's easier to give it to somebody else. So, if you get to 20 and a kid makes a mistake, right? Like, oh no. And you're like, oh man, guys, we were so close. All right, well, we got that far. We can get that far again. Let's try it again. This is where being the facilitator is really important, because you can keep it moving and normalize mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. I make mistakes every time I play this game, and I've played it for years. So ultimately, it's going to be clap for 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Right? And we just go all the way up to 21. And when you get all the numbers, you say, hooray for us, and you win. So this is another fun game. Card games, big fan of using cards because kids like tactile things. Mouse, if you're a camp kid, you may remember this game. Deck of cards, 3 to 4. Group facilitator is the dealer. And now the dealer is the only person who knows the rules. Nobody else knows the rules. So this game is very quickly going to be very frustrating, and that's on purpose. And I often will set my kids' expectations when I play Mal with them. I'll say, hey, listen, this game looks simple and it's frustrating. It's supposed to make you frustrated. So if you feel frustrated, that's okay. Everybody gets 7 cards. The rest of the cards go in a stack face down. Just so you know, the game is basically Uno. Get rid of all your cards, match number and suit, except you say Mal, not Uno. Every time a kid makes a mistake, they have to pick up an extra card. Every time. Mistakes include talking. No one is allowed to talk but the dealer. Touching a card before the dealer does. Playing a card incorrectly. And remember, they're not going to know the rules, so they're going to make mistakes. Not picking up a card if you can't play. Not knowing it's your turn. Putting down 2 cards. As the dealer, you have a lot of power. You're like, nope, mistake, 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 mistake. And your kids are going to get really frustrated. You might get somebody who rage quits. If need be, pause the game and talk about it, right? But just come back to this lesson. This is supposed to be frustrating. I'm frustrating you on purpose so you can practice feeling frustrated, feeling what it's like to not know, and then do it anyway. So debrief is particularly important with this game, talking about feelings, making sure everybody feels supported and heard, and then telling them, now you know this game, now you know the rules, so you can be a dealer for somebody else. But remember how it felt when you didn't know the rules and you felt like I was picking on you. Didn't feel very good, right? Remember that the next time you're playing it with somebody else. When I played this at the last school I worked on, I taught my morning social skills group this, and I thought I would do it in my 2 groups in the afternoon. At lunchtime, it spread like a virus, right? Like all of a sudden there's all these packs of cards. I'm not really sure where they got them, right? And like, oh, he's just like, no, like, oh no, you made a mistake. And it was like flowing, and all of a sudden, like the whole school knew it. It was very, very fun. Just a terrific game. And the sort of thing is, you can keep playing Mao. One tweak you can do to the rules is if the dealer gets to go 3 times, the dealer gets to make an additional rule that they don't tell anybody else. So maybe jacks are wild cards. So you can change it. You can put down another card of whatever you want. Or maybe 2s are draw 2 to the next person. And once again, you have to use your paying attention skills, your frustration tolerance to understand what those rules might be. So this isn't one of those games that you've played it once and you can never play it again. Be creative. Pinocchio. This is the PG version of a card game that you may know as 2 particular letters, B and S. We've tweaked it a little bit so kids get to practice different skills. Use 1 deck of cards for every group of 6 students, 7 cards per person. The goal is to get rid of all your cards by putting in a pile from 2 to ace and repeating. So we go 1 at a time. We put all our cards face down. Now, when it's your turn, so I start and I put down a 2, the next person has to put down a 3. Now, you may not have a 3, or you may have a 3. You may choose to put down whatever card you want. Now, if I think you're lying, I'm going to look at you and say, Pinocchio, And if I'm right, you have to pick up all the cards in the pile. If I'm wrong, I have to pick up all the cards in the pile. So, and the game continues in that way. So it's about playing with social expectations. It's about learning how to lie. It's learning how to catch somebody else in a lie. And you can be over the top and exaggerating if you're playing this with your kids. Like 6, right? And then say, like, what do you think I'm communicating here? Do you think that I'm playing with you? Do you think that I'm lying? And this is one of those games that everyone's going to guess right and everyone's going to guess wrong at some point, and it's okay to have a little like, I fooled you, right? That's okay. That's part of the game, but let's keep it light, right? That's all right. So that's Pinocchio. And then classic Mafia. I absolutely adore this game. It's can play with groups of 6, as many as 40. I've played it with my online improv class that I teach to bright and quirky kids. If any of you were in that, I know we had some people from Arizona. You may remember it. It's just an absolute hoot. Start as the narrator. I'd say do that for at least the first 3 iterations so we get some practice. The object of the game is for the townsfolk to identify and eliminate the mafia through questioning. So the narrator gets to nominate in secret, so the group's heads down and eyes closed. Mafia are the bad guys. 1 mafia for every 5 to 6 kids. Doctor silently saves a person every night. The cop can silently accuse somebody every night. The narrator knows the rules, and the narrator's job is to move the story along. You will find a million versions of this game. You can add a lot of different other roles. This is classic Mafia. This is where I like to keep it. If your kids want to add things, I'll trust your judgment on that. Each round ends with an accusation that must be seconded. So if we're playing this all together and I see Joanne over there is looking shifty, Joanne's looking all over the room, I think Joanne's the Mafia. And then Brian over here goes, yeah, I think Dr. Matt's right. Joanne's definitely the Mafia. Joanne has a nomination and a second. She has to defend herself. Then we vote. If majority rules, if majority votes her, she's been eliminated from the game. If not, we get to keep going. Somebody else gets nominated. And then when you're eliminated, you become an angel. You get to watch the game, but you can't talk. This is an important skill for our gifted kids to learn because they're definitely going to be like, what? No! And like, oh, no talking, right? Put them on mute if we're doing distance learning. And then if once the mafia members are eliminated, the game is over. But if they're not, when the townsfolk go to sleep, the mafia open their eyes quietly, silently point to somebody to eliminate, the mafia close their eyes, and then when everybody wakes up, that person's been eliminated. So, and then new rounds of accusations. I've linked to the formal rules here, but this is a game where, once again, we're going to talk about frustration and tolerance. We're going to talk about social skills and reading other people. And this is another game where, I often will email parents when I'm running this game because, the word mafia can be a loaded term, but also kids get upset when they play this game. Now, our role as parents and professionals and teachers isn't to keep our kids from being upset. And that's an easy trap to fall into. As long as our kids are happy, everything's going to be okay. When was the last time you spent the entire day happy? It's pretty rare, right? Life is about learning to manage frustration, disappointment, anger, jealousy, whatever that thing might be. So if Pedro gets accused every round and finally he melts down, he's like, guys, it's not fair, I'm not in the mafia, and quits the game or turns his computer off, we can pause and say, why do you think Pedro feels this way right now? We also remind him it's just part of a game. It's not personal. In this game, we're all playing characters, and that's really important. And then we practice and we normalize the feelings and we keep going. But this is a game that often does evoke big feelings. So be prepared for that. Alphabet Challenge. This is another, I love this one. This is a great rainy day game. This is a great game if you've got 10 minutes at the end of class. Any written material, and then you write A to Z down the left-hand side of a paper, and then the first 26 letters of your chosen text that you've picked. So you're gonna get couplets. I Oh yeah, I wrote. I am the very model of a modern major general for mine. Old school Broadway. You're welcome. And you have to come up with a famous person or character for every couplet. So AI, Allen Iverson; BA, Barry Allen, et cetera, et cetera. After 3 minutes, compare answers. You get 1 point for every unique answer. So if I'm the only person who says Barry Allen, I get a point. If everybody says Barry Allen, we get no points. Um, and kids will reach for answers. They may make somebody up. They may reference some TikTok star that you're not sure is real. So just tell everybody to let's be honest about this, and repeat as necessary. You can have kids, the winner, choose the new text. But it's a great way to talk about like who's pulling what information from where, right? And how does it feel when you have the same answer as somebody? Because your kid's reaction is gonna be like, no way, I thought I was the only person who picked Barry Allen. Then you can say, wait, hold on. So Debbie and Tom, you guys both picked Barry Allen. Do you guys both like DC superheroes? I mean, yeah, I guess, right? So we can reframe it as a point of connection. Pretty cool. Alphabet packing is another one. You have a large steamer trunk. You're packing it. Everybody goes in order, adding objects for each letter of the alphabet, going one at a time. Everything has to fit in the trunk. Now, when I play this the first time, I'll say that each individual object would have to fit in the trunk, so you can't do E for elephant. As the kids get better, I'll say you have to do it so every object fits in the trunk at the same time. So that's much harder. But you can start simple. Um, you can't repeat any items. So like you can't do bathing suit and swimsuit. You can't, if somebody does F for food, which is pretty common answer, I usually reject that because like you have to be more specific, right? Like what does food mean? Food could be anything. So French fries. Okay, so nobody else can do French fries. Um, I will time this. Usually as I do this as like an opening gambit for social emotional learning. We're like, oh, hey guys, this took you 17 minutes to do. And then we do it in a couple of months after we've done some reps in this. And you'll find that they went down in time, even if you make it harder, because they've gotten used to talking to each other and communicating with each other and succeeding with each other. It is so important for neurodiverse kids to experience success with others. Neurodiverse kids are great at succeeding on their own, right? Hey, I need you to build a life-size replica of the Sears Tower out of Legos. I will do that. I can do that for you right now. I need you to work with these 3 other people. I can't, I won't. Because it's hard. It's hard to work with other people. So practice this, make it intentional. Say, I know you could do this on your own. I want to see how you do this with 5 other kids. Go. Lots of games off the shelf. Apples to Apples is great for practicing the difference between fact and opinion. If any of your kids are twice exceptional on the autism spectrum, they might be much more concrete than your more lateral thinkers, creative thinkers. So practice that. If the word for apples to apples is gargantuan, and somebody picks a microbe for the answer, your more concrete kids will be like, but microbes aren't gargantuan. That's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. So why do you think they picked it? Are you allowed to be funny? Remember, the dealer gets to choose the answer. Just because you don't agree with it doesn't make it wrong. Pitch deck is about public speaking and persuading with ridiculous arguments. Super fight, absurd arguments with pop culture. So who would win in a fight? Wolverine, but he's on roller skates versus a great white shark with laser eyes. Well, let's figure that out. I mean, I would actually watch that show if that show existed. Building a planet together in Planet, Dungeons and Dragons sort of speaks for itself. If you have a connected classroom, the Jackbox games are just phenomenal. They're really about getting a lot of lateral thinking, a lot of like wordplay and nuance, things that our kids might not be so good at, but it's very quirky and silly in a way that it's going to draw them in. Lots of websites as well. Freerice.com is a great way to answer trivia questions to donate rice. Working on transcribing. There's just this infinite pile of stuff that needs to be transcribed out there. You log on to how to transcribe. You get to transcribe some things. You can either donate your time, or in some of them, they even pay to do research online, do tutoring online. This is, once again, it's figuring out what matters to your kids and using the internet to connect them to that. So that is that is the end of our time. Now we could go through a million other games, and we could talk about all the permutations and all different ways to do it. But this is the thing. This is a great starting off point, and hopefully there's some good ideas here, and hopefully this inspires you. And especially about the improv thing, which improv is its own separate talk that I give. If the improv stuff is interesting to you, email me. I will shoot you my improv PowerPoint and we can talk more about it. I'm happy to consult with you and work with you on this. The biggest takeaway from this talk is that we meet our kids where they are and we help them build the skills that they'll need. These things are hard, they're clunky, they're going to feel gross at first, but they will grow quickly if we do it with intention. So set our kids up for success, and you're going to watch them blossom in ways outside the classroom. And then you'll find that kids who do better socially and emotionally turn around and do even better in the classroom, and they do better at home, and they feel better about themselves. So this really becomes making our whole lives better, which, I mean, that's why we all do this work, right? We want our kids to have good lives. So with that, I leave you to it. Please feel free to use me as a resource. Thank you so much for your time. I hope I were able to meet again in the future in some point. I would love to come to Arizona and see all you fine people. Until then, this is Dr. Matt signing off. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you for your time. Take care.